Welcome to the HRKyle Podcast, your go-to source for insightful discussions on leadership, job searching, and all things human resources. I'm your host, HRKyle, and each week we dive deep into topics relevant to professionals seeking to elevate their careers and organizations. Whether you're a seasoned leader, a job seeker navigating the ever-changing landscape of employment, or an enthusiast looking to stay ahead of the curve, this is the podcast for you. Join me as we explore practical strategies, share expert insights, and engage in meaningful conversations that empower you to succeed in today's dynamic workplace. So, adjust your headphones and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another edition of the HRKyle Podcast. I'm your host, HRKyle. We're again so happy that you could join us today. And as usual, we have a very unique topic that we'll be talking about today. And it's one that I don't believe gets nearly enough attention in the workplace. And that is how employers can support employees with children. So they have employees that have children and all the responsibilities that means, and looking at how employers currently do that and how they could probably be better. So in segment one, Becki and I will be talking about this, and we both have direct experience with this, having been parents and navigating our careers at the same time. And then in segment two, as usual, we've got an expert to come on and share her experience in how she advises organizations up to and including her own on how to best navigate this world of taking care of your children while still being a productive employee, and moreover, advising companies how they can best support their employees so they can thrive on both the home front and on the work front. But before we get to our discussion today, which I'm really looking forward to, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about some of the things that we're up to at HRKyle, and then we'll be right back. Greetings, I'm Kyle Smith, and I'm here to offer you a speaking experience that goes beyond the ordinary. With a rich background in leadership, HR, and personal development, I bring a unique blend of expertise and passion to every presentation. Whether it's Leadership Unleashed, well-being at work, or career mastery, I delve into topics that empower individuals and organizations to reach their fullest potential. What sets me apart? Proven expertise, an engaging delivery style, and actionable insights that drive positive change. But here's the kicker. I don't just offer a one-size-fits-all approach. I customize my content to meet the specific needs and goals of your event. So let's elevate your event together. Contact me now to reserve your date and unlock the full potential of your audience and organization. Don't miss out on the opportunity to inspire greatness. Visit HRKyle.com today. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that brief break and learning more about some of the things that we can work together. And I hope you take advantage of that as well. We'd love to work with you. If you're listening out there, we are your guide through the world of work. So even if the commercials don't cover something that you're interested in, if there is something relative to the workplace, and that is you as a leader or you as an employee, that you're working through or challenged with or what have you, or it's an initiative you want to put in place, give us a call. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to talk through it. Possibly it's a consultation. Maybe there's more to it, but we'd love to work with you and talk about that topic. So feel free to give us a call at 330-541-5533. But let's get back to the topic at hand, and that is how employers can best support employees who have children. And as usual, I'm going to welcome Becki to the studio now. Becki's going to take over segment one like she does so well each and every week, and she'll direct this discussion. So Becki, welcome back.
Thank you, Kyle. This is a really good topic to begin, and it'll be interesting to see how you and I talk about our stories, because they're very different as far as child care when we were working. And I do like what you said right at the beginning. This is not a topic that's discussed very much, so it's good that we're bringing this up.
Agreed. Yeah, we hear a lot about work from home, but we don't hear about working as part of a family.
Yes. So let's just start with what the biggest challenges are we faced as working parents, and
Okay.
how do their workplaces support us?
Yeah, I'm going to give the audience some perspective here because oftentimes when you hear the male perspective, it's related to an individual who either has a spouse, a wife, who helps with the child care, or if it's a situation where the man is divorced, most generally he doesn't have custody. Well, my situation is a little bit different. So I had gained full custody of my son when he was 2 years old, and I was in a professional workplace. And it definitely is, in your perspective, I know it's going to be different than mine. People I found were much more understanding if it's a single mother having to navigate the process. What I mean by understanding, much more forgiving if she needed to leave early or come in late or got a call about her child. When it's a man in the workplace, the first question becomes, well, can't his mom do that? But you never, at least I never did, hear a situation where a woman who had children was called away due to her child and someone say, well, can't his dad take care of that? Never heard it, but I heard it more than a few times from women. The other thing that I heard was, it wasn't championed. It was more like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, that his mother doesn't have custody, as if that's a bad thing. So my experience was a different kind of challenge. And keeping in mind, as everyone listening should know, I was in leadership positions. I was in HR management roles with a pretty large company when this all first happened. And then in subsequent roles, I was always the top HR person in the organization. So I was navigating this career that was more of a senior leadership type position while being a single father. And I wouldn't say necessarily the organizations were very accepting of it. What it required me to do is to take lesser roles so that I could still manage and put my priorities in the right place, because my priority, number one, was to care for my son. Number two was to make a good living for us, and in that order. And between you and I didn't find employers, and for that matter, coworkers, to be very understanding.
Right. Yeah, and mine is very different. First of all, I was lucky to have good daycare where she really enjoyed going. I did start out working 8 to 5 jobs, but again, the daycare was really good. But then as she got older, I went back into the classroom. So my hours were pretty much exactly like hers. So I would drop her off at school, go to work, and then I would be done either before she was, or she maybe waited 15 minutes, and I'd pick her up. So that was known. Then at one point I owned my own business, so I was able to come and go as I needed to get her. Only one bad situation I had when I worked with the local newspaper, and I made the mistake of telling my boss that I had to take the day off because my child was sick, and he docked my pay. But that's different now. You can say, my child is sick or my husband's sick, and they don't. Most places I know don't dock pay for that. But yeah, sadly that happened.
Yeah, it was a very, very different time because, and to give everyone here perspective. So my situation was happening in the mid to late 2000s. Becki, when was yours taking place?
Mine was 1994 for about 10 years, 2004, 2005, till she was old enough to stay home by herself, to get off the bus and stay home by herself.
Right. So for this audience's perspective, we're talking 20 plus years ago. What I think it did for me, and I know this isn't necessarily your question, but Becki, it helped to inform me better as an HR professional, having lived experiences around this, to say, you know what, we need to do this for our employees who have children, or for that matter, I really extended it beyond that. I don't know of too many employees that don't have some sort of an outside obligation, whether it's caring for a niece or a nephew or a grandparent or someone or something else that can disrupt a typical workday that it requires them to leave. And what I learned over time was the vast majority of those people just wanted flexibility, meaning to take care of their responsibilities, but then still meet their work responsibilities. I encountered very few people that expected special treatment, meaning, well, I'm just not given as much work, or I'm allowed to skirt my deadlines. I encountered very, very little of that. Mainly what I encountered was people wishing for flexibility so they could thrive in both of those scenarios: home and caring for their children or their obligation, and work, caring for their obligations at work.
Well, and talking about flexibility, so when I owned my own business, my assistant had children also. And if she had to come in later, or one of her kids was sick and she couldn't, we had to switch nights or something, again, I could just go pick up my daughter and I could bring her back to my job. And then she just did things, around the job for a few hours while I worked. So that's flexibility too, in that sometimes maybe the kids have to go into work.
Well, and exactly. And I've seen those situations, and the kids actually enjoy it, and it allows some relief for the parent, because every parent feels that sense of guilt when they have to make some sort of a change from the routine, or sometimes it's just leaving the child. So being able to bring them into a work situation or handle work calls, which I did, I would oftentimes, have to leave work on time to pick up my son at daycare, but I would be taking phone calls on the way home. And we kind of had fun with it, because Nathan, after a while, got to know some of my coworkers, and he would look forward to it. And even when the phone would ring, he'd say, "Oh, is that Todd?" And Todd, if you're listening, Nathan would say that, "Is that Todd?" Because Todd and I, at one of my jobs, we would talk after 5 o'clock. I'd have to leave, but we'd have things to talk about. And he and I would just talk on the way home, and Nathan would be in the car, and we'd get done what we had to get done. And that was what life looked like.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so great. I love remote work, and I think that's just so great that we have that out there, that flexibility out there, that hopefully more companies and bosses take advantage of for the employees. So what policies or practices do you think make the biggest difference for working parents?
Well, you know me, I'm on a lot of these topics, I'm less of a policy person and more of a practice person. And I find the organizations, and you and I know one particular I'm thinking of here. Every time they have an issue come up or a topic come up relative to working from home or working remotely or whatever, someone's got to go sit down and talk to the HR person who's an attorney and have them write up a policy to direct it. Well, I think that limits you as an employer, one, and it shows that you're really not people friendly. So I'm big on the practices. What I mean by practices, I mean working with people and trusting them and allowing them to earn the right to work from home. And you and I've we've been in this situation, even with our situation. Yes, we're married and we contribute to this business, but I have no doubt in my mind, if you're not in this office, whatever, you're still working. You're going to get done what you have to do. I don't have to check with you to see if you're working or what you're doing or whatever. And, I don't want to be that person anyways, but I think that's what it becomes. I think it becomes working with your employees, building up that trust. If it's a new employee, maybe they have to earn it a little bit as far as what they're doing, but they're building up that level of trust to where they can have the flexibility where they come to you and they say, "Hey, I'm going to have to get out of here early tonight. I'll get this done when I'm at home." Okay. Great. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.
Well, and that's another good point too. Kids' sports are after school, 3,
Yep.
4, 5 o'clock, and especially younger kids. And we need those bosses who say, if I ask, hey, I got to leave at 4. I'll not take a lunch today. My kid plays at 4:30. You good with that? And they say yes.
Right. Exactly.
Instead of, well, make sure that you put in those extra 30 minutes, that attitude.
Well, and I would even say, take it a step further, that you have a boss that you're comfortable to talk with to say, "Hey, we're heading into the fall. My daughter plays soccer. And what that means is there's going to be days I'm going to have to leave at 4 o'clock or 3:30 to make those practices. And you know me, I'm going to get my work done anyways." That way, when that time rolls around and you're walking, let's say I'm the boss, you're walking by my office and you wave and say, "I'll see you tomorrow." I already know what it is. Because the other thing I think we've got to get to in these situations, the person shouldn't have to feel like they ask for permission every time, like they're a child in a classroom asking to use the restroom.
Yes.
We've got to get beyond that. We're grown adults. And I always say, look at the results. If that person, let's say it's you, is leaving, 4 or 5 times a week at 3:30, but their work is getting done, they're exceeding expectations, that's all I really care about.
Right.
But by the same token, same example, and the person's work is suffering, they're not meeting deadlines, the work quality is not there, then you address it. You address it just like any other performance issue.
Yes. So how is that culture created then to truly support parents and, just going beyond offering the, parental leave and those kind of things, but how do HR professionals and leaders create that culture?
Well, I'm glad you said that. And we included HR leaders in that question, but it really has to start at your top leadership. They have to exhibit these qualities and they have to believe in them. And this is going to be a shameless plug, but I'm just going to do it anyways. One of our talks that I give is called Life is a Team Game. And you remember I gave one of these a few months ago and you saw some of the reaction. But there are organizations that don't trust their employees. Right. And even in that discussion I'm thinking of where I said, 95 to 99% or whatever percent of the people can be trusted. They want to do their best. They want to thrive in their jobs and so on. And you sat there and you saw people in that audience question that. Like they don't believe that to be true. Right. And that's your starting point. One of the persons I'm thinking of is a head of HR for a significant size company. She did not support the idea that 95 to 98% of employees want to do their best and they can be trusted to do that. So right there, you're not going to have employee-friendly policies around working from home, hybrid situations. You're not going to, because you've got to start from that starting point. So if you already don't trust your employees, you're not going to trust them to do those other things. That's the boss that you're going to have to check into every time. You're going to have to get permission to leave every time you want to. They're going to be questioning you. Like you said, you're going to have to build this case. Okay, I'm leaving today, but can I come in half an hour early tomorrow and I'll skip my lunch? People shouldn't have to do that. I mean, unless you're an hourly employee, then yeah, you do have to account for your time. That I get. But if you're a grown adult in a salaried position, if you came to me like that, I would be like, God, Becki, please don't. You're making me uncomfortable because you're a grown woman. I don't need you bowing down to me like a child. Yeah, I know I get a little passionate about this, but I see this too much, and it's gotten old.
Yep, I totally understand that, but we both have been there. It's an odd situation.
Yep.
So just to kind of wrap this up, so what advice can we give to working parents today, especially those people that are navigating their career growth and trying to raise young kids? And I'm talking male and female.
Yep. Well, for one, you got to set a priority list, and you got to tell yourself, what does that mean? You got to break it down into some level of detail. For one, if you're in a living situation where both parents are there, okay, that you start from that point. And you begin to divvy things out. And, it becomes which parent can leave first, or if this person's available, then that person's available. So you're kind of game planning these situations in advance. And please, as an employer, I do ask you to do that. Don't come into, you've been a parent for all these years. Don't act like when an emergency comes up, you have no idea what to do. Have your game plan in advance. I always did. I had my son's daycare close by. I had a plan as far as what I needed to do, when I needed to do it if something went south. So please have that game plan in place first, depending on your situation, and let your boss know your circumstance and what would need to happen and what you would need to do. And that way, when it happens, you're not sitting there feeling guilty, because you should never feel guilty. If your first priority is your child, and that child needs you should never feel guilty for leaving work. And we've all learned this sometimes the hard way, because if your employer doesn't need you, they're not going to feel too guilty about letting go. Certainly, it's not going to affect their decision making. So you set your priorities, you build your plan, and you determine how you're going to handle those situations. And you try to align yourself with organizations that clearly would support that. How do you know that? Well, you look at their website and you see what they stand for. You watch their social media and so on. And then you ask about it in the interview. You ask about the flexibility that exists there. And even by indirectly asking it, you get a feel. You can get a feel for how they answer a question. Well, we put in a lot of hours here. You do the classic, we work hard and play hard. Well, guess what? They're not going to be very flexible.
Right.
I've never found a company that used that statement to be very flexible. What they mean is we need you to put in as many hours as you humanly possible. This needs to be priority one in your life, and everything else takes a back seat. Well, if you have kids, it can't work that way. So that's not going to be a good employer for you.
Well, and that's a great point, because we talk about through the business how the interview side works both ways. You are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So ask those questions about flexibility from working home. What if my kids get sick? Those types of things.
Yep. And make sure they give you examples. And I've always said this in interviews. When you interview, I'm looking for you to give me an example that proves your point. Well, expect the employer to do the same thing, not just kind of poo-poo it. And what I mean is, that you ask them, okay, do you have flexible, do you consider this to be flexible working arrangements here? Yeah, we do. Okay, well, maybe they do. Versus, you know what, we do. And here's why. We have a lot of people here that are parents. They have obligations. So we try to work around their schedules. I would encourage you through this interview process to make sure you talk with your supervisor or your potential supervisor just to talk through that. But you'll find when things come up, we want you to take care of those obligations at home. Your family life is as important as anything. We just ask that you make sure that you meet your obligations here at work. So then you ask yourself as the potential, as the candidate, which answer is better? Which answer do you trust? Well, it's number two. Just like when you're being interviewed and you give an example, a story, that proves you know what you're talking about and you really can deliver on what you're saying. Companies are the same way. If they can't give you tangible examples to support that they are flexible, they offer work from home, they're hybrid, if they can't give you real examples for that, chances are it's probably not true.
Well, and I think ending this leads me to your saying, what is it that you say? Don't you want to go to something and not, how do you say that about a job?
Yeah, exactly. When you're making a change, I don't care what kind of job change it is, make sure that you're going to something rather than leaving something. And, let those words sink in because they have meaning. Leaving means one thing. Going implies something else. And part of your going, especially as a parent, is you're going to some place that's going to support your role as a parent as much as it does as an employee, because it has to.
Right. And that's why I wanted to end with that. I love that saying. I always forget it, but I love that saying. And especially with this, if they cannot be flexible with you being a parent, it's not the place for you.
No, you're going to be miserable and you're going to fail on both sides. You're going to fail your kids and you're going to fail your job.
Yep, exactly. Well, thanks, Kyle. Again, great discussion.
Yep, I enjoyed it. It certainly hit home for both of us, didn't it?
It did.
Well, folks, I want to thank you as well for tuning into segment 1, but don't you dare leave because we're going to continue this discussion, at least the discussion around this topic, in segment 2. We've got a guest. She's a world-renowned expert on this topic. She built these programs into her own employer, and now she goes around the country talking to other employers about how they can be better and more supportive of their employees who have children. So stick around. After this break, we'll be right back.
Are you stuck in a job you hate? Dreaming of a career that excites you? It's time to turn those dreams into reality with Get the Job You Love by Kyle Patrick Smith, also known as HRKyle. Discover proven strategies to land your dream job, master interviews, and stand out from the crowd. Packed with expert advice and practical tips, Get the Job You Love is your ultimate guide to career success. Available now on Amazon and other online retailers. Don't wait. Start your journey to a fulfilling career today. Get the job you love. Because you deserve a job you love.
Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HRKyle. HRKyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HRKyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HRKyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HRKyle and unlock success today. visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HRKyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business.
Welcome back to segment 2 of the HRKyle podcast. And we're going to continue on this topic that we started in segment 1 about supporting parents in the workplace. And I've shared with you before that I get this topic from a very personal sense. One, of course, I've been in HR for 25 plus years at this point, but I've also been a parent who needed to work and navigate everything that meant, up to and including being a single parent to a little boy. He was 2 years old at the time, up until he was about 10 years old. So I get the complexity of the topic that we're talking about, and I also understand the fact that it's not a one-size-fits-all topic. But we're fortunate tonight to welcome a guest here into segment 2. I'll give a little bit of background about her, and then we'll have her introduce herself as well. But her name is Stephanie Van Meter, and Stephanie is currently the Chief of Staff at an organization called Ammunition. And they're actually in the marketing segment. They create creatives, and they also provide marketing consulting to various firms throughout the U.S. But she's also a known advocate for policies that support employees as parents. In fact, she's done some really novel work in that area, especially in some of the industries that she's supported. So I can't think of a better person to join me tonight and talk about this topic of supporting parents in the workplace than Stephanie Van Meter. So Stephanie, welcome to the HRKyle podcast.
Thanks, Kyle. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you.
Wonderful. Well, we're certainly glad to have you. This is a hot topic for many of us in a lot of different ways, and I'm glad we can shine some light on this topic tonight with your expertise.
I am as well.
So Stephanie, starting off, I gave you a little bit of an introduction, but I know I didn't sell you completely in all the things that you've done and where you're coming from. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I am the Chief of Staff at Ammunition. We are a full service advertising agency. We're headquartered in Atlanta. We've been in the industry as an agency for 7 years. Our CEO and founder has been in advertising for as long as he can remember, which is a very long time. And I joined the agency 2 years ago. I, in my current role, oversee our HR function and our operations function. And my background is really people and operations. So the role that I have now is an amazing blend of that. And I think in addition to that, I'm someone who's been in positions with companies that are really growth oriented. So I have a real passion for building businesses and leading growing companies and figuring out people operations strategies and operational strategies that work really well, that are both repeatable and scalable and good fits for businesses where they are as they grow.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for giving us that background, because I think some of the points that you've made there lead well into the discussion that we're going to have tonight. And I think it gives it some wonderful context. So I'm going to come back to a few of those points here as we talk. But one of the things that you're most known for, and this is well beyond the walls of Ammunition, is some work that you did there relative to enhancing their parental leave policies. So that's where we want to start this conversation tonight. And I want to ask you, what were the key factors that really influenced your decision to extend not only maternity leave, which certainly has been out there and it's been a topic of discussion, but also paternity leave? So both leave for both mothers and fathers. What were some of the key factors that went into this parental leave policy that you developed?
Well, first and foremost, I am, in addition to being the agency's chief of staff and overseeing operations in HR, I'm also a first-time mom. My son was born 15 months ago, which now seems like a lifetime ago. So I experienced maternity leave for the first time firsthand. So I had and have had an informed perspective on that benefit, and a perspective on how, not only how it felt, but operationally how it functioned, who did my job when I was out, and what kind of work there was to come back to. So I had an informed perspective on how we could potentially elevate this benefit while maintaining operational excellence. So that's kind of where it started. But then I would say, just in terms of how the agency looks at benefits, every year we do, and I say we meaning the CEO and people operations leader, does an audit of the agency's benefit package to ensure that it's both competitive and also appropriate for the state of the agency and its makeup, knowing that we work with humans and humans have needs that need to be met, and that we want to do our best to be supportive in that way. So we do that every year. We audit the package. And then the way we do that, we're a pretty data-driven agency. And so we are members of the American Association for Advertising Agencies, which is a great resource for us. And we regularly use their industry data to benchmark our offerings. So from salaries to benefits, we use data to ensure that what we're offering folks is fair, it's equitable, and it's also competitive in the industry. So we use that data, as well as anecdotal feedback from current employees and industry peers. We did a deep dive into our offerings. We analyzed what we had, what was working, what was not working, what we'd heard from people, and then really benchmark that against the data that we collected. And then what I did, my part in it, is I did the deep dive, I did the analysis, and I had a dialogue with our CEO, whom I work closely with every day, and I shared my perspective. And as we do anytime we're making important decisions about our clients or our people, we balance what we can do for our team and our clients that's in line with our agency values, which I can share more about later on. We try to balance that with the notion that we're in a client service business. And so we need to do absolutely right by our clients while serving our people. So that was, I would say, those were the key factors that influenced the decision. And in addition to it being just a really pragmatic exercise for businesses of any size to go through.
And Stephanie, thank you for walking us through that, because what you hit on there was something that stood out to me when I first saw your request come through to join me for an episode. And that is, these programs and this policy that you're talking about wasn't something that grew out of, as you described, hey, I've been through this, so now this is something I think the company should do. Or, we need to do these type of things because this is something that's becoming popular. You did go through an analysis of the topic, and you not only looked internally to your company, but you certainly looked externally. And as you shared a moment ago, you made sure that whatever you did was not only in alignment with the company values, but also in alignment with operating a successful, thriving, popular business. So, going through that analysis, to me, I think was critical to the kind of success that you're achieving as a result of this. But also, I think it's part of the notoriety as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's one of the things that agency leadership, that ammunition leadership does really well, is with every decision that we make, we really try to have our people at the forefront of that decision and our clients. So it's whatever we can do to ensure that both are equally supported. That's where we're going to go.
Right. So advertising, the industry as a whole has, fairly or not, gotten this reputation, and I suppose it's probably from some of the more popular shows or a particular show that was on one of the platforms, streaming platforms, but it's gotten a certain reputation. as being maybe more male dominated or not as open to these kind of things that we're talking about. With that in mind, how are you able to navigate these challenges? And we know there's challenges whenever you're rolling out a policy such as a parental leave. How did you navigate those to really create a policy that made a difference and had an impact? And what strategies did you use to really gain the support from the stakeholders beyond those that we've already talked about?
Sure. I think, as you mentioned, the industry, the discipline, has been what it's been over time. I think, though, I will say that anyone who thinks advertising is run by a bunch of men probably doesn't know much about advertising, because I have countless peers in the industry who are female and who are in leadership positions. We work with a number of colleges and universities, and we see and experience really great female talent, both female and male, but a lot of really great female talent out of those colleges and universities. So I think the industry has really changed. I think it can be kind to all, all types of people. I will say that I will give our executive leadership a lot of credit in that we really pride ourselves on being open-minded and being open to having conversations and dialogue about what we think can make us better. And that might be a problem to solve for our clients. It might be a conversation about benefits, but no matter the challenge, we approach conversations with an open mind. At least we really strive to. So I don't necessarily feel that I was up against any sort of, wall or some sort of, negative mindset that what I was going to propose was maybe, crazy or far out of line, because I know our leadership team and I know our mindset. So I already had that in mind as I went through the exercise, knowing that, hey, if we look at the data and the data says this, and we know our people and we know them well, and I'm putting together a proposal that does propose or kind of imagine a world where we do extend the policy, then it's going to be for a reason that we can all defend and we can all get behind.
Yeah, great point. Those listening, and I'll let Stephanie in on a little secret here. I set her up with that question a little bit because reason being, there are a lot of companies out there, not so much industry, but there are companies out there that would say, oh my gosh, we're not ready for parental leave, especially as it would relate to men. And as Stephanie has shared with you, those are myths. That's not the world we live in now. Are there possibly little pockets of that? Absolutely. But as I shared earlier, having been a single parent, I will tell this audience that I received as much support from my male colleagues and male leadership as I did from female leaders and female colleagues. And these were industries such as trucking and manufacturing that I can assure you some people would look and say, oh my gosh, no, they're not open to those kind of things. And that's simply a myth in the world that we live in today. So Stephanie, just letting you in on a little something there. I was just giving you a hard time because I wanted our audience to realize, don't think those old ways, because clearly you didn't approach it that way.
I didn't. I mean, I've certainly heard the myths, right? But I work where I work, I'm on the team that I'm on because I know our values and I know how we operate, and it's not in the spirit of what you've just described, right, as the potentially old way of advertising.
Yep. And I would say that most industries, most companies are not in that old way anymore. People, quote unquote, get it. So Stephanie, the biggest part of this, and you and I both know this, is it having an impact on your employee base? So that's the question. What are you seeing from an impact standpoint on your employees relative to these policies that we're talking about?
I think that anytime you can find a meaningful, natural, potentially mutually beneficial opportunity to offer something, to extend something, to improve something for your employees and your team, that it increases buy-in, it increases loyalty, it allows folks to I think it's a moment of reflection, honestly, um, to take a moment and realize that this may not be the case everywhere, and we should be proud of what we're doing and who we are. I think we, I was really excited to present this to our leadership team first and then to the rest of the agency. And it brought me, frankly, a lot of joy to look around and see everyone from people who have children already to, recent college graduates nodding and smiling and getting excited about us really being a trendsetter in this way is what we're doing. Because when we looked at the data and we found that that agencies of our size, of our makeup, in our region were offering sometimes even less than what we were offering before we made the change, we decided we don't want to be like everyone else. We want to push the envelope. We want to set a new standard. And I think letting folks on our team into that feeling has been really impactful. People are proud. They feel like they're aligned holistically to what the business offers them professionally and personally. And I think that leads to them feeling bought in and excited about the day-to-day aspects of the agency and the long term.
Love it. Love it. So that leads well into my last question. And unfortunately, we could talk about this for the next hour, but we don't have that luxury. We've got just about a minute left. So Stephanie, I'm going to ask you this. One of the things that drew me to this conversation and to talking with you was you possess a certain level of fearlessness in blazing some new trails. So with that in mind, what are you seeing in the future, whether it's for ammunition as a company or just in general, relative to policies that are more supportive of parents in the workplace?
I think that we need to all be really transparent and realistic about what being a new parent entails. So being mindful of the state of being that we're asking folks to return to work in, what kind of expectations we're setting and creating for them. Are we setting them up for success? Are we setting the agency up for success or the business up for success? And I think as long as we're having those conversations and keeping that in mind when we're talking about parental leave, I think we can arrive at a benefit or an offering that really does meet the person where they are and meets the company where they are.
Wonderful. Folks, we've been talking with Stephanie Van Meter. She's Chief of Staff at the firm known as Ammunition, and they're in the marketing and public relations field out there. They're located in Atlanta. Stephanie herself is an advocate, but she's also a doer as it relates to supporting parents in the workplace. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Kyle.
And folks, thank you as well for joining us for yet another edition of the HRKyle Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did, and certainly appreciate your listenership. And I just want to leave you with these 3 words before I leave. Stay focused, stay grounded, and stay tuned.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the HRKyle Podcast. We hope you found our discussion valuable and filled with insights that you can apply in your professional journey. Whether you're a business leader aiming to foster a thriving workplace or a job seeker looking to carve out your own path, remember that HRKyle is the compass that can guide you towards success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. We're committed to being your trusted source for HR wisdom, and we look forward to having you back with us for our next episode. Remember, in the world of HR and professional growth, there's always room for progress. Be sure to visit our website at HRKyle.com. That's HRKyle.com to learn more about how we can help you meet your business and professional goals. So until next time, this is HRKyle signing off. Stay motivated, stay informed, and keep reaching for those career goals. Music provided by bensound.com. That's bensound.com.